Ladies, gentlemen, and others, today we're going to talk about cinema in a way that we really have never delved into before. We're going to be talking to India's very first certified intimacy coordinator. I'm so intrigued for the episode ahead, so I'm going to remind you to make sure you review and rate the episode if you do really like it, because this conversation with Aastha Khanna is something I've been looking forward to for a while. Welcome to the pod, Aastha.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you could do this because Panchmi talked about you when she came on the pod a while ago, and I was so intrigued with the idea that we have someone who is, of course, India's first certified intimacy coordinator or director. What do we go with officially?
You can go with either. Director sounds nicer. Coordinator is more internationally accepted.
I'm going to ask you the cliche question of defining what that role means for someone who doesn't exactly know what an intimacy coordinator does on a film set.
So an intimacy coordinator is basically somebody who liaises between producer and performer for scenes of intimacy. So what they do is they basically make sure that they're upholding the performer's consent and like choreographing scenes according to their boundaries, while also making sure that they're being able to achieve the director's vision and circumvent any possible lawsuits for the producers. That's kind of the definition of it.
And also between the two or more co-actors in that
between
scene.
the performers, and then between performers, actors, performers, producers, directors, like that, all of these people. So essentially the reason it's called intimacy coordinator is because you're constantly coordinating and having to negotiate with all of the different departments, trying to make sure that the performers are at all points of time feeling comfortable for everything that's being shot.
Is there a lot of negotiation needed, or are they all usually on the same page?
No, there is negotiation needed. Yeah. I very rarely find situations where everything's so smooth that I feel like all I'm here to do is like distribute mint. That happens too. I've had those few instances where like everything's just perfect and it's just flowing beautifully and nobody is like getting on each other's nerves. Nobody is like trying to push another person in spaces they don't want to be in. So in those, like when that happens, everything's going well, then all I'm doing on set is like take mint.
I love that. At what point of time does a filmmaker bring you on board? I'm asking you this because I've always wondered, especially as a teenager, I think I really wondered that do you have to tell your cast in advance that listen, there's going to be this. So do you come on board while the contract is being negotiated to then put these intimacy points in mind there? Or does it happen, do you come in only on a stage where you're on set saying, okay, I'm now going to coordinate the level of comfort you have while...
So the ideal time to hire an intimacy coordinator is once the script has been greenlit and you've started hiring your HODs. So when usually what will happen is once the script has been greenlit, the director will start hiring the costume designer, the production designer, the DOP, the director will start bringing all of these people on board. The producer will start hiring them and like putting them on the payroll. Around that time is the time which is it's ideal for an intimacy coordinator to be brought on board. So that then at that point what they can do is that they can chit chat with the casting director and make sure that for the scenes that have intimacy, the people that are being cast are already aware of the intimacy that is at play.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for instance, I mean, of course, we just spoke about how Panchmi spoke about me. I've worked on a couple of projects with Panchmi, actually more than a couple. The great thing about having someone like Panch as a casting director is that the minute that she realizes that there is any kind of intimacy on script, she will make sure that in her casting call, before people are coming into audition, they're already aware of the fact that role requires intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of intimacy है? ऐसा नहीं कि just बोल दो वो intimacy है आपका. तो मतलब intimacy can be something from just giving like kissing to complete nudity to being raped to not heterosexual or not heteronormative kind of intimacy. It can be a lot of things.
Yeah.
But in cases where you don't have casting directors like Punch that will actually make sure of certain things, you will have certain casting directors that will just like, because they want to get the bulk of auditions and better performances, they will not take into consideration that a particular actor may or may not be comfortable doing intimacy. And I've seen this especially happen with the secondary cast and the tertiary cast. Like usually your hero and heroine people have checked with, and also the power dynamic is such, hero heroine अगर ना बोलेंगे तो you're never gonna, मतलब कितना ही push कर लोगे, you will not like write the person off, right?
It's not a deal breaker.
If it is a deal breaker, it's a conversation the storyteller will have had in the very beginning.
Right.
Like, I mean, for instance, if I'm telling a story about a stripper in a film like Hustlers, if I didn't tell J-Lo that she's going to have to strip,
It's as simple as that.
it would just not make sense, right? But at that point also, an actor has read the script and they're aware of like what are the scenes that are coming to them. That power dynamic can also be in a way where they can turn around and say, you know what, this I'm uncomfortable doing, and then the director can decide whether it's a negotiable or a non-negotiable.
But you're saying it's not just as much of a conversation with secondary and tertiary cast.
It isn't a conversation at all, because more often than not, the way the casting system in that space works is that you're given this one tiny scene. You're not even given your script until you're brought on board. So you're given this one tiny scene that you've read for the casting director. Then sometimes your director will meet you, or they'll just look at that one audition, sometimes just look at a photograph and be like, yeah, okay, just bring this person. And like they're a day player, like 2, 3, 4 days on shoot or something like that. Or like they're coming in for only a single episode on a web show or something. They're not given that amount of like autonomy, and also not given all of the information sometimes.
So what happens if they say no after they've, like, let's say you've shot for 2 days and it's on the third day that you're required to be intimate? How does a situation like that work
So
out then?
that's the issue, right? What ends up happening in most of these scenarios is if they don't have an intimacy coordinator, they haven't had those conversations before, you're treading a very tight rope. And essentially the idea is that if I'm going to push this person into doing something that they're not comfortable doing, then I'm not letting them uphold their own consent. So I'm coercing them, essentially, right? As a filmmaker, if I'm forcing somebody to do something they're not comfortable doing because they're not giving active consent, they're scared they'll lose their job. I mean, I'll give you an example. For somebody who's a producer, they're like, I want this one actor to show her bare back. That's implied nudity. That's not even considered nudity in the real terms of like
In the literal sense. Yeah.
how we contractually define nudity. Bareback is basically all the way from your neck up to your tailbone.
Yeah.
Till just before your butt crack, right? The actor has refused to do it because they're like, no, I'm uncomfortable with the idea of doing it. But the producer has called me up and told me, see, they've put pictures of themselves up on Instagram where they have bareback. So what the fuck is this bullshit about all of a sudden?
That's their choice.
Exactly. Now, how do you explain that to a producer when the producer turns around and says, no, you convince them to do this?
Oh dear. And
So
you've
then-
had to be in this position.
Yeah. I mean, not just this position. I've had to be in positions where a director on set has told me, you have to convince this actor to show cleavage. She's wearing full clothes. I want to see cleavage. So I've had situations where a person on set has told me, no, we need to stuff someone's breasts because I can't see enough cleavage.
Oh, so
in
that
their
would also
body.
come to you under intimacy,
Of course.
coordinated jurisdiction per se.
Of course. Because see, in a scene of intimacy, if you have, I'll just give you a basic hetero scene of intimacy. Girl on top, boy lying down on his back. Girl is straddling boy. You put your camera, say, on a top shot.
So you want
Right? You want to see cleavage. Right? And then you want to see this like hair being flipped back, full body cleavage coming, like all of that stuff. But that's very male gaze.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a whole other conversation to begin with. But some people can be like, yeah, okay, I'm comfortable to do it. I don't care. And they'll do it. And then there'll be some people that are not comfortable to do it. And then if you're putting them in that position where your director's like, no, but I'm going to shoot it like this only.
Oh my God.
Who the hell is this actor to tell me where I can put the camera and where I can't?
That
Like,
sounds
what do you
like-
do with that kind of
sounds
thing?
like such a tricky situation to be in the middle of.
So you're constantly, as an intimacy coordinator, whether you like it or not, doing a lot of conflict negotiation. And there are also, bear in mind, times as an intimacy coordinator, you have to give a realistic perspective even to the actor. Right? Like, you have to put it down straight for them. You're not an actor's entourage. you're hired by the producer. You're supposed to be on set to make sure that a particular scene is delivered a certain kind of way.
Right.
So if an intimacy, if a particular performer reaches a conflict point where the director's losing their shit, and the reason they're losing their shit is because time is running out, this actor suddenly decided to reverse consent or whatever, or not actually been very clear about what it was that they were comfortable or uncomfortable with me or with the director in the beginning, and then they've come out of it later. There are those situations also. Sometimes an actor will just wake up in the morning and be like, no, I don't like how my body is looking today. Technically, in an ideal world, it's their consent. They can choose not to shoot a scene, but there's a lot more at play there.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of money at play there. You're not feeling great about your body today. I understand, but you have to also understand that there is a whole set standing there waiting for you to,
with money spent and timelines in place. Yes, of course.
so it's not that ideal space. Sometimes you have to put it down for them, and sometimes you also have to tell them that, see, if you're reversing consent in this way right now, especially if people are series long people, when you're doing a web show. I've had a director dhamkaify an actor, मैं अगले season में I'll write you out.
Oh dear.
Because we've had this conversation before. If now this is happening to you, then I'm sorry. What do I do?
Oh shit.
But they're not wrong also.
Yeah, I mean, but you feel bad because you're like, it's just such a precarious position for everyone to be in, because I'm
Yeah.
sure the actor's also worried for like getting written off. That also means the word of mouth of the situation, and we all know how the entertainment industry works. That can be a very to be able to take a stand and be there. It's also kind of like a little ballsy, what I mean?
No. So in those kinds of situations, more often than not, a smaller actor or a newer actor, they'll break. They won't stand for it. They'll be like, okay, fine, you know what, get it done with, get it over with, move on.
Yeah, because वो तो दब के रह जाएंगे ना if they're like new. They'll be
हाँ,
like, just give in.
but in that situation, again, as an intimacy coordinator, आप कितना झगड़ सकते हो? अब एक्टर बोल रहा है हाँ मैं कर लूंगा, डायरेक्टर बोल रहा है इसको करने दो. इंटिमेसी कोऑर्डिनेटर क्या खड़े होके बीच में झंडा गाड़ेगा कि ना हम नहीं करने देंगे?
नहीं मियाँ बीवी राजी तो अब क्या करेगा काजी?
Exactly. So in that scenario, you have to be very particularly careful about making sure that the performer's feeling comfortable through it in a way that like whatever they need, however they need it, how can you support them? You have to shift gears at that point, because a lot of times this idea of consent and it being absolute is very idealistic. So it works 90% of the time, but then there is that 10% of the time when there is some form of overlap. So we put in stops for stuff like that also. So we put in stops like if the actor pulls away, like reverses consent is the phrase we would use. In that situation, you can have a body double.
Okay.
Do that job. So then the actor doesn't have to physically be the one doing that job. But because they consented to having it consented in the beginning for it to have been done.
It's implied that they did it, but not actually did it.
Yeah,
basically.
it's taken that they have consented that their image being associated with that particular shot is not an issue.
Do the level of their comfort with intimacy, like for example, you used the term implied nudity earlier. Does the level of their okay gets written into the contract? Is that a thing?
Yeah. So with intimacy coordinators working more and more in the industry, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring in something called a rider, like an extra page, an addendum added to their contract, which very clearly states कौन सी scene में intimacy है, कितना intimacy है, कितना लंबा चलेगा scene, how elaborate is it, what is the vision for the scene. So it will say something along the lines of A has simulated sex with B, nudity involved for A is say rare below the waist or rare full body nudity. That kind of like very clear, like what part of the body is going to be visible on camera. Then go into like something like the scene length is 42 seconds approx.
Will we need to be shot over X days? Is that like
X days, within X days time, so on and so forth. It's just one page. Bahut clear.
It's good now. It's good to have
but
that
what
level.
What that does is actually it feels like a lot of paperwork for the production, but the production doesn't a lot of productions don't realize that that's that one bloody page that saves them from everything. Yeah.
We were talking about earlier, like, for example, even just the idea that so much of the content that we've grown up watching, for example, comes from the male gaze. And so much of it, I mean, it's changing now. I definitely like to say it's changing now. But I feel like so much of it has been skewed in one direction earlier. So it's nice to see that there are so many technicalities that are coming into it, which I won't say prevent. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't completely prevent a lot of the chaos around shooting intimacy. I'm sure there is some amount of chaos attached to it and, details. But it's nice to see that there is some kind of balance kicking into that space.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think, and when I speak about gaze often, people associate the intimacy coordinator's job role with fixing the gaze. When it comes to
but that's
shooting
not,
scene.
that shouldn't be in your
It's not.
purview.
It's not. And that's exactly what I was getting to, which is that when you're working, you're trying to make sure that that person in that very moment, then and there, is feeling comfortable doing the
Right.
job. And whatever the director's vision is, you want to serve that vision.
Right.
So if that director's vision means that he wants to, he or she or they, whoever they are, want to shoot a hypersexualized item song, go for it. No problem. Hire me so that I can make sure that that one girl that you're making stand in front of some 300 men is feeling comfortable doing what she's being made to do in that
So
situation.
you don't decide whether it's going to be from the male gaze or female gaze or the level of, you're not there to judge by a moral compass, essentially.
Exactly. That is the crux of at least my standpoint, which is I cannot impose my moral compass on a filmmaker. What I can do is I can expect that eventually in time the audiences will get educated enough to then choose not to consume that.
Right.
But for as long as the audience is consuming, the makers are making,
Yeah.
who is anybody else to in that space stop somebody from telling a story the way that they want to tell it?
That's the fundamental, the freedom of being able to tell a story fundamentally comes from the idea of the way they write it.
And then you choose what you want to consume, and you choose what you don't want to or what you don't stand with.
Yeah.
Like, I may have a lot of different political opinions about a lot of different films that come out. I can choose not to go and watch and spend that 400 rupees on that ticket. I can choose not to click onto it on my OTT platform.
I've been a content creator for 12 years now, but I consume a lot of Bollywood. Okay, first of all, I'm a big Bollywood head. So I love to like analyze and get into characters, and this character would have been better if this was the arch and this is the way. But I'm big on those kind of things. So when Gehraiyan happened and these conversations were floating around, I was like, it's nice to see that at least the reactions were so much better than what Kank got in 2006-7, whenever that movie came out.
100%.
The audiences know what they want and know what they don't want. That's awesome, because that is what everybody else then feeds off, right? And that's what they say, art inspires reality and vice
versa. Yeah. Actually, feeding off of that, when you think about it, when Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna came out, it was just a lot of people feeling very angry about the idea of infidelity. And if you draw that to what society looked like at that time, when we were children, when we were in school, it was probably the first generation of us realizing that a lot of our co-peers were people that had single parents and were people that had divorces happening around them. Up until the generation before our parents, the concept of divorce was a very
big deal.
I mean, not just a very big deal. The concept of leaving your partner once you've chosen to commit to them was just considered to be an absolute no-go.
Yeah.
Like, I would say the only possible explanation for why you could leave your partner would be if that they turned into an alcoholic. Or like if they were beating the shit out of you and like some strong male personality in your own home then finally took a stand and said, you know what, I'm not going to let my sister or my daughter have to go through this for their lives and then bring them back home. Like my Nani's generation, I may have heard of maybe one story of like Dur Dur Ka Kahani where, you know, the concept of leaving your partner or falling in love with another partner to bahut dur ki baat. But leaving your partner was just not considered to be okay.
Yeah.
It was a taboo. So then when you think of the mass around Kank ka time, it is people that were realizing that there were people in and around of them that were having extramarital affairs.
Yeah.
It became a thing. I don't remember where, but this person just said it to me. They said the differences in gender identity of this generation is the infidelity and divorces of the previous generation in India.
That's very well put.
Yeah, it is that the fact that this generation has now taken that one step which is separate to how they view the world, how they view their lives, how they want to, love who they want to love, they want to be with who they want to be with, they want to identify as whoever they want to identify as and whoever they are. That concept was slightly different in that previous generation where people were like, I will not stick to live with somebody if they're making me unhappy, and I will move on to fall in love with someone else. And because that was still considered to be such a taboo situation, and like you'd still hear, she's like, I'm sure you've heard this in school when you were there.
I mean, 100%. I mean, not even school. I even remember someone having this conversation around me last year in 2022. I'm talking about something that recent, where someone older was saying, oh my God, they got divorced and blah, blah, blah. And it was a relatively short marriage. And I was like, more power to her to walk out of a shitty situation. So I feel like the lens that we're looking at things with has changed, and I would
100%.
much rather someone walk out of a shitty situation and hit that refresh button rather than sticking around because oh my God you have to, and हमने 7 फेरे ले रखे हैं या हमने कबूल है बोल रखा है, हमने I do बोल रखा है. No, this is one life, you get one life. Figure your shit out in this life.
Yeah, and if something's making you unhappy, life's too short to stick to it. But at the same time, essentially it is up to each person how they want to live their life. Like, I don't want to shame somebody who decided to stick through a sticky situation also.
Fair. No, the idea is that choice needs to be yours.
I love it when cinema can also hold up a mirror to society. As filmmakers, we're not meant to always create aspirational stories or stories that inspire people to be a certain kind of way. There are times that we have to hold up a mirror to society to show them, hey, you know what? The reason that we can tell the story on such a large scale is because it's happening in your next door neighbor's house. It's happening in the same building. It's happening with your cousins. It's happening with the people you're around. It's not something that is so unheard of that, that it's not like it's relatable. You can tell when you see something, right?
Which kind of brings me to what was your journey that led you to this point? Because being India's first certified intimacy director, there's no path specific to follow, especially in the Indian landscape I'm talking about. In fact, IMDb doesn't even recognize intimacy director as a legit, title.
We're additional crew.
Yeah. So when it comes to that, what brought you here? I know that you were an AD with Shakun Batra up until a point, and then of course you're working independently now. But what, of course, number one, want to throw in the fact that you instantly come across as someone who's very warm and can make someone comfortable. So I feel like that has to be a big qualification to be in this job. But what made you want to be here, or rather, how did you land up here? I would rather ask.
Long story, so brace yourself.
Love it.
I was working as a normal AD, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Came to Bombay after getting a film degree, wondering whether I wanted to be a director or a producer, but kind of figuring it out, right? And in that moment, what you do is that you take any job that comes your way because you just want to be on a film set. That's kind of how I got to the film space. And I was very protective of the space of being in the Hindi film industry. I come from a completely non-film family.
No way.
Based out of Calcutta. Middle class business family. Have absolutely no contact whatsoever to anybody in the industry. And to the extent that we're huge film buffs, the whole Khanna family. And also the now married Bharadwaj family. Again, got married into a completely so far out of the work that I do. It's not funny. There's civil servants based out of Jammu. The family that I've gotten married to, my husband's a lawyer. There's absolutely no connection.
But they're all family, but they're all like movie buffs.
All people that love watching films.
Okay. When you said non-movie, I was like, wait, you seem like quite a filmy. So
I'm full filmy. I grew up watching at least one film a week. at the very least. And that meant like in the theater, at the very least. So any film that came out, mom, dad, and I had to go watch it. But again, no connection whatsoever. So of course, our social scenes also like my parents' friends, my friends, the school that I came from, our relatives, everybody, they all had opinions about this industry. And the further you are away from it, the more there is just conversation around it's
Intrigue.
a bad industry, it's not safe for women, don't know what they do. All we hear about is them doing coke and partying and drinking, and all of these superstars have a lot of tantrums, and all they want to know is about the gossip. And
Some
they
of
just
these
like
things are true. We won't say which ones. That's
but
fine.
some of these things are true to humanity, na?
That's
Matlab, like
true.
who's not? It's not like every Punjabi wedding where people are getting drunk and puking is a Bollywood film set.
I never thought about it like that. But okay.
People are getting drunk and doing coke in a hedge fund also.
Well, very true.
Like it doesn't matter. It's society. There are going to be people that are going to do what they want to do, and the only reason that it comes more into the limelight is because the people that you're discussing are all people that you want to watch and hear and talk about all
And
the
are
time.
famous.
Yeah,
Everybody
and are
loves talking
famous.
about famous people.
Yeah. So when I was coming to Bombay and I told my father, I said, देखो मैं जा रही हूँ Bombay, मुझे काम करना है. And my dad was very supportive and he said, yeah, you go do your thing. And if you ever need anything from me, if you need my support, I'm here. So I came and I started working, whatever. Everybody else around my parents constantly told my parents that this is not a good idea. This is a very bad idea. Single child, daughter, you're a businessman, you sent her off to Bombay to waste her time. So like it was a very like not accepted by, I mean, I've heard of many stories of my parents telling me, this is what they said. But it didn't faze them, which was a good thing because they really protected me through it. They were like, she's going to do what she wants to do. But then the Me Too movement happened. And when the Me Too movement happened, I started fiercely fighting against people that had a lot of shit to say about the industry. At least in my own social area. Because they would say, see, we told you it's such a bad place.
Where were you at this point in time? Like, had you already started working?
I was working 2018, 2017. The Me Too movement started in the US. 2018, it was very much a part of conversation in India. I started working in the industry when I did my first internship in the industry for a film called Badlapur, which was in 2014. So I was pretty much... and 2016, I moved to Bombay full time. So between 2016 and 2018, I was an AD. But nobody knew who I was, and I was still trying to, move from one paycheck to the next. But anytime and every time I would go back home, there would be that conversation underlying, oh, come tell us some gossip about what's going on, which is this new star, do they actually sleep with everyone? Oof. Like all of that stuff, right? And then beyond a point, you just have to be like, I don't want to talk about this. Like they come to work, they're a punctual person, they do their shot and go back home. Like I don't care. What somebody does in their personal life, I'm not that interested in, because I'm so close to them. I'm not watching them or seeing them in tabloids, right? I'm seeing them as normal people coming to set, doing their job and going home. What they do in their personal life is pretty much the same as what any other one of my friends or any of my colleagues would be doing in their personal lives. And I really don't care about the actor on set as any more than I do about my friend who just got cheated on or just went through a little bit of a rough patch or whatever it is, right? So I'm not going to come give you gossip about either. But at the same time, when the Me Too movement started, people started talking about how unsafe this place is to work and how every man around is a predator, how so many stories have been silenced by people around them, by the pressures that people have been in, a lot of stories around, and rightly so, of experiences that were very unpleasant. But then people outside started talking shit about it and not taking it for what it is. That is, we need to find a way in which we can make workspaces safer and a way wherein which we can teach people that in any kind of harassment is not okay. We were reaching a point where we were just talking shit about people and canceling people, and some rightly so. in some cases also just like victim shaming, and also going into this space of like, this is just not a great space to work in. And when they started like completely digressing from what the point was to the point of like, ये गंदी इंडस्ट्री है और यहाँ अपने बच्चों को भेजना नहीं चाहिए काम करने के लिए, and you know, all of that stuff, that started really irritating me. And then the other thing that really irritated me was that while the West came up with intimacy coordinators as a way to create a space that would, like a braver space for people to have like a voice and like to have somebody who actually takes over the department of intimacy, tries to make sure that, you know, if there is any kind of like potential risk situations or like sexual harassment or whatsoever, or you know, what have you, they can be minimized, like the risk can be minimized. What India was doing at the time was creating committees, or like posh committees, or like sexual harassment committees, and putting helplines out there for people to reach out in case they had already been harassed.
Do you mean to say there was no preventative measure that
There
you
was
saw?
cure, there was no prevention. And nobody was doing anything about prevention apart from running 3-hour-long seminars about how it's a bad thing to harass somebody.
All of this kind of fueled you to get set on the path that you're now
Oh,
on.
yeah. Because when I was watching all of this happen, and then I was like, you know, but people that are actually industry stakeholders, people that have the possible opportunity of trying to find real solutions, are unable to find the real solutions around it. And at that point, mind you, I did not know that intimacy coordinators exist. So I came to know about what intimacy coordinators do and exist in the year 2020 when I started working on Gehraiya as Shakun's DA. We were just about to go on shoot we were going to shoot in Sri Lanka pre-COVID. Shakun just in general, as he used to do with a lot of other articles, sent an article to me about an intimacy coordinator. He sent it to me saying, oh, look how the West is doing it. Maybe, and I was his DA. So he was like, maybe we can reach out to one of these people and check out if they have any like tips on how we can do intimacy better. And I was just blown away by that one article. And so I was like, I want to do this. Like, this is what I want to do. It just felt like a calling. So I applied and got into training. And all of that stuff happened when we suddenly had gone into COVID and the film had gotten pushed for when it would be shot. I was like, ab to ghar pe hai yaar,
It's a sign.
It's a sign. It was a sign when the person that I was in touch with, Amanda Blumenthal, is an intimacy coordinator, founder of of Intimacy Professionals Association, based out of LA. So Amanda's done stuff like Euphoria and The Affair and How to Get Away with Murder and, you know, all of these other shows as an intimacy coordinator. So I reached out to her and I was like, bro, can you explain to me what intimacy coordinators do? And like, do you have any guidelines? Do you have any like processes? So then she told me, she said, we got to talking and she said, you know, I really like chatting with you. I think you should do the training program. And I said, what training program? And she said, I have a training program, but it's probably going to be in October. Why don't you check it out on the website? And then she sent me the link and I was like, we'll finish shooting Gehraiya by then. So then I'll go and do this. I'll take a break. So whatever money I earn on Gehraiya, I'll spend on
Love it.
educating myself. Then COVID happened. So shooting in March in Sri Lanka got canned because we all went into COVID lockdown. And then we were told that we have no idea when we're going to start up again. So at that point, I was like, what am I going to do? With my life in general, we were all just trying to figure out what is going to happen, right, at that point. And I got an email from Amanda saying she's decided that she's going to pull up her cohort for the year and not do it in October and do it now in March because everyone's at home and can actually use this time to study and train.
Did it need to be remote or did you need to be there in person?
So they did all of the lectures online, and then they said we're going to do an in-person, like 1 week in-person choreography thing, and then you come in for the retreat. So you come to the US and we'll do it there. And all of the theory and all of the writing of the exams and everything, we can move it online. So then that's what they did, and I spent all of COVID studying to become an intimacy coordinator. So before Gehraiya started shooting, I was already an IC.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, more power to you for being able to like find time and do this and being able to find a real world impact to something that you've studied so
Yeah.
closely and clearly feel very passionate about. The fact that you are sex positive, or the fact that you're so open about your journey, what drove you to coming here, and all of that is just awesome, because like I said, it's very intriguing to see someone in your place right now, because it's so new, and it's great to know that the generations after ours will hopefully grow up with this as a normalized factor to how things work.
Yeah.
But I have to ask you something spicy.
Ask.
What's the shittiest experience you've had while choreographing an intimate scene on set?
Okay, so there was this one show I was working on. Big director, has worked on like one national award winning film, like huge ass director, okay? Very, very prudish and extremely patriarchal, like toxic masculinity to like no level, but very woke.
How please explain how you can be very patriarchal and toxic masculinity and then be very woke.
Because then you say very woke things.
You say woke things. You're
Huh.
not actually woke.
No,
See,
no,
there's a
no. So you
difference.
say, when you sit in a meeting, then you're saying very woke things.
You're saying the right things, but
You're
you're
saying
not.
all the right things. You're saying, I want the actors to be very comfortable. I want to shoot it very aesthetically. I want to make sure that, this is not the main thing in the script. It's not, it's a part of the story. It's important to the story because this is the journey of their characters. And, eventually this is the scene that culminates to the next season. And that is why this is the build up that we have been waiting for as an audience. So
I think I found my favorite segment on today's podcast. But on a final note, do you want to tell us about any upcoming exciting projects that you have going on?
yeah, actually, one is coming up on the 5th of May. It's called Saas Bahu or Flamingo. It's coming on Hotstar. It's Homi Adajania's web show. And both Homi and I think we're very, very proud of the intimacy on the show. One that is also coming out, which is another Maddock Productions, is called Ji Karda on Amazon Prime, which is, I think, coming out in the next few months as well. So yeah, I've got quite a few releases back to back, which is great. I love when I get releases and like projects come out. Like most recently, when Class came out and all the kids got so much love for it. And I was just so happy to see that, it was being received well. The intimacy got received so well. People were accepting just seeing school kids having sex, kissing, being naked, even in the sense that they were like, this is not a world that they can relate to, but it was still a
Aesthetically well done piece of content.
Also just the fact that, they're teenagers, and yes, of course, they're exploring their identities, and of course, they're exploring their bodies and each other's bodies and each other's identities and their sexuality and attraction and what have you, right? Just generally all of those basic human things that happen to people in their adolescent and teenage and pre-adult years. It just felt like it was really well accepted. So I think a lot of the other stuff that I'm coming up with is also going to go well, hopefully. Yeah.
I'm wishing you all the luck, because I'm very excited to see what you do. Yours is a career I will be following very, very closely, I promise. Thank you for coming on the pod. Thank you for being as honest and like just so open with everything you shared with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a delightful conversation.
Thank you.